There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean Breathes Books, and it's time. It's past time, in fact, for another book haul. Got an interesting batch for you today. Here is a work of translated Chinese fiction. It's a novella, or really a glorified short story, I think. It's by a female Chinese writer, Jiang, and the English title is The Red Detachment of Women. Translated from the Chinese by Mingyuan and Annelise Finegan. And I don't know which Chinese language it's translated from. And it's published by a publisher I'd never heard of, Hermits United in London and Paris. I'm not a big fan of these French-like book covers with just a title and an author, but I didn't let it stop me from ordering it. I think it's just a short story. The translation is 2023, the original Chinese 2007. This publisher, they publish translated Chinese literature in French also. Oh, I haven't looked at their website before. I'll put a link to the website. It looks pretty darn interesting, actually. But yes, The Red Detachment, they're marketing it as a novella. And I'll read you the synopsis because it doesn't sound like a synopsis of a plot, but apparently it is. Here's what it says on the publisher's website. Writers talk about literature on the Singapore River. So that sounds like it's a series of lectures or something, but no, that's the premise of the novella. Distinct and displaced pasts meet. Individual encounters with a revolutionary ballet carry a generation's lost youth and unspoken tragedy. I'll read the first two paragraphs, each of which are one sentence only. That day, 3 men accompanied my husband on a tour of the Singapore River. 3 gentlemen, none of whom I know. Nor do I know the Singapore River. Sightseeing trips to that island nation, world famous for its cleanliness, affluence, lawfulness, and enchanting scenery, have been made by many of my compatriots. But I have never traveled further south than the city of Sanya. It's time for me to get this one hauled because I'm going to be buddy reading it with my dear friend Leah next month. The next in our chronological buddy reading of Elizabeth Jane Howard's novels, this is Odd Girl Out. I think it's one of her more famous ones that wasn't part of that later series. This one, 1972. The protagonists are a married couple, happy, lovely home, content. And then a woman comes to stay with them and plot ensues. And the woman is not content or happy. She is rich, rootless, and amoral. I'll read the opening 3 paragraphs. Of course I don't mind, my darling. Of course I don't. She wore the top half of his pajamas and was putting cherry jam on a piece of toast. She thought for a moment and then added, "It will be lovely for me to have someone to talk to while you're in London." Edmund Cornhill looked at his wife for some time without replying. At moments like these, he told himself, his customary feeling of devotion to her was shot with something positively erotic. What he liked about her, he went on to himself, he was a man of incessant internal words, few of which reached the drum of human ear, was the way in which she always contrived to be rational about any sacrificing attitude he called upon her to make. She did not simply say that something would be all right. She said why it would be, and then, of course, it nearly always was. She was in bed, a place that he felt sure most wives did not occupy often enough. He never let her get up in the morning until he had either set out for London or otherwise begun his day. I haven't had any luck finding a pronunciation help for the author, but the book is called Landbridge, Life in Fragments by Y-Dang Troeung, who recently passed away, a writer and assistant English prof at UBC in Vancouver. And she died of cancer at the age of 42, I think about 2 years ago, perhaps. And the author of my favorite novel of all time, Madeleine Thien, author of Do Not Say We Have Nothing, was intimately involved in bringing this book to publication. And I can't remember the circumstances. I think she might have done the editing, but it was a very deep involvement, and I think was a close friend of the author's. Troeung was born in Thailand's Y-Dang refugee camp and was named, her given name, Y-Dang, comes from the name of that camp. And she was Cambodian. She was a Cambodian refugee in that camp, and at the age of 1 was one of the last group of Cambodian refugees to come to Canada, and this is her memoir. And I have certainly developed an interest in Cambodian literature in the last few years, so I'm looking forward to reading this. The epigraph is, I think, a dictionary definition. It comes from a Dictionary of Zoology by Michael Allaby, and it's the definition of Landbridge. A connection between two land masses, especially continents, that allows the migration of plants and animals from one land mass to the other. Here is the opening little entry, fragment, and I'll show you that picture. Good. And then I'll read it. It's called Portrait. The image opposite was taken in the refugee camp where I was born. In the background, the mountains of Y-Dang loom, forming a picturesque backdrop for 6 refugees. My mother, me, an unknown girl, and 3 members of my extended family. A story of pain subtends and saturates this image. Death, illness, disappearance, starvation, forced marriage, child loss, and so much more. As I look upon this image now, I do not see a portrait of suffering. I see a serendipitous, reconstituted family. I see a mother's fleeting instance of joy born out of a chance encounter with another Cambodian refugee in the camp, looking to make a few extra dollars with his Polaroid camera. What mother would not want a photo, at least one photo, of her new baby in that fragile first year of her life? And here is a copy of a book I read about 3 or 4 years ago. Loved, read it I think on ebook or something, and just needed a copy for my shelf because it's just a marvelous novel. It's one of the best American novels and best Indigenous authored novels that I've read in many a year. The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. In fact, I think that was the read-along book for the first Indigathon, perhaps. Anyway, I just thought it was a masterful novel. And so now I have my own copy, and I'll reread it someday. It's about a Dakota family and members of that family struggling for belonging in community, and it's just beautiful. And the Seed Keeper, the seeds and growing plants and flowers play such a central role, and it's just so beautifully done. It's not overdone. The characters just leapt off the page. I loved it so much. And I see, as of the time of this publication, Diane Wilson had written 2 other books that look to be maybe memoirs that I need to get to. This was 2021. The opening paragraphs of chapter 1 have a lot of Indigenous names that I don't know how to pronounce, so I will not read from it for you, but I do passionately recommend this just wonderful novel. Here is a Saskatchewan novel by an author that I have yet to read, and she's very famous in Saskatchewan. She's won all kinds of awards, I believe. It's Cool Water by Diane Warren. Picked up at a thrift shop because I hadn't read her yet. This is from 2010, and it's set in small-town Saskatchewan. The name of the town is Juliet, a blink of an eye kind of town. That sounds like where I grew up. Oh, and Sharon Butala has blurbed it, and I happen to know that Sharon Butala only blurbs books that she deems worthy of her imprimatur. So here's what she says. Warm-hearted, witty, original. Cool Water maintains its steady, low-key tone even as it pulls you into its world and doesn't let you go. It has been a long time since I loved a novel so much. Opening paragraph. It was the end of August, before the Perry Land and Cattle Company's fall gather, and the ranch cowboys had too much time on their hands. That's a great opening sentence. The ranch cowboys had too much time on their hands. That just sort of opens a whole world, doesn't it? They were standing around the dusty yard, doing nothing more than watch the horses swat flies with their tails, when the young buck, Ivan Dodge, somehow managed to convince one of the old veteran cowboys, Henry Merchant was his name, to meet his challenge of 100-mile horse race through the dunes and the grasslands of the Little Snake Hills. It wasn't like Henry to act so impulsively, but Ivan Dodge was getting on his nerves with his restless strut and his mouth that never stopped yapping, even in his sleep. Henry figured he could beat him. He figured Ivan Dodge was a rabbit, fast all right, but not smart enough to win. You needed strategy to win a 100-mile race. Oh my God, I just want to keep reading. That sounds amazing. Oh, but you know what? I just noticed. This is an ARC. It's an uncorrected proof not for sale that I bought at a secondhand bookstore. I think I'll get a better copy to read. I just noticed that as I was putting the book down. And finally, here's an Irish novel that got lots of accolades when it came out about a year ago. Let's see, when did it come out? Yeah, last year, 2023. It's called The Rachel Incident by Carol O'Donoghue. Carolyn O'Donoghue. I kept saying Carol. It's Carolyn O'Donoghue. Carol O'Donoghue lives in London, born in Ireland. It's about young lovers. Rachel is working at a bookstore. She meets James. He is effervescent and insistently heterosexual, and the plot ensues. I'll read the first page. It's not a full page. It looks like this, but let's hear it. I only ever really talk about Dr. Byrne with James Devlin, and so I always assumed that were he to ever come back into my life, it would be through James. I was wrong. He came via the toy show. The Late Late Toy Show is an annual Irish TV event whereby small children review the year's best toys and advise other children what to put on their Santa lists. It's a big deal if you're a child in Ireland, and a bigger deal if you're an Irish adult who lives abroad. It's a hard thing to explain to outsiders. This, in itself, is part of the appeal. Either you get it or you don't. You're one of us or you're not. Perhaps it's because so many people claim Irishness that we keep putting our private jokes on higher and higher shelves, so you have to ask a member of staff to get them down for you. Oh my God, I love that sentence so much. All over the world, there are group screenings where Irish adults cheer for 5-year-olds testing out Polly Pockets on live TV. I am an editor of the Hibernian Post, a newspaper for the Irish in Britain. It is my job to write about expat movements, and therefore it is my job to write about the toy show. In fact, I'll stop there just a little bit before the bottom of the page, because that kind of has a standalone vitality, but doesn't that sound marvelous? I think I'm going to read it. I think I'll do some, uncharacteristically, I'll do some seasonal Christmas reading of this one. Which one appeals to you most? Thanks for watching.